So the first time I heard about TEDxYouth Kenyalang event was when the event's Twitter account followed my account back. I didn't think much about it at the time, except, if it's a good enough event, I might just fly back to attend it. So I clicked on the Twitter feed, I looked for information about the tickets, and I saw the early bird tickets had a t-shirt with it. And I was like, yes, I want to have a t-shirt. Only to scroll down a little bit more and see that the early bird tickets were already sold out. But then again, an hour later, after reading the tweets, I actually got an invitation to be the speaker for this event, to which I have to admit the first thought that went through my mind was, yes, I get another chance at getting a t-shirt. But when all that t-shirt hype died down, I found myself thinking that this is a really rare opportunity that I should take full advantage of to give back and make as much difference as I can. So I found it very intriguing that this was the first thought on my head, to give back, to make a difference. And what happened was I stumbled on an article in Wall Street Journal, which took an excerpt from Elizabeth Svoboda's book entitled What Makes a Hero? The surprising science behind the surprising science of selflessness. And in this excerpt, it talked about the research of the human anatomy, especially in your brain and its relation to the culture of giving back. And you know what's the interesting find? That humans are naturally wired to give back. Very contrary of what the normal claim that, every human being is a selfish person and will put personal gains above everything else. And so I decided to do an experiment. I went on YouTube and I tried to search previous TED Talk speakers or TEDx speakers who talked about the same topic. And the theory in my head was, if we're naturally wired to do this, then there'll be a lot of people talking about it. And I wasn't wrong, it's true. By the time I went to the 4th page of the search list, I just kind of gave up counting. And the question that you might be thinking now is, why are you still talking about it if so many people have talked about it before? Well, in my personal opinion, I think there's not enough being talked about in the Sarawakian context of giving back, and especially in the area of education. So while scrolling down, one talk kind of took my attention, and it's entitled Everyone Can Be a Philanthropist by David Rubenstein. And David Rubenstein is a co-CEO and a co-founder of the Carlyle Group. And here he claimed that everyone can be a philanthropist because if you look at the definition of philanthropy, it means loving humanity. Meaning that when you give back, it doesn't just have to be in money form. It can also be the simple action of sharing an idea, sharing your time, giving whatever resources that you have, which means that no matter in what stage of your life, whether you're young or whether you're older, you can be the change you want to see in this world. Some philanthropists, if we go by this definition, are legendary. Come on, Gandhi, Mother Teresa, right? But there are some people who have given back. But that doesn't discount how much impact they've left behind. And today I want to tell you 3 stories in the Sarawakian context of people who have given back. And the first one is of these 3 men. Frank Davidson, Kerry Tolley, and Hudson Southwell were 3 young men from Australia in the 1920s who felt called by God to come to Sarawak and reach out in particular to the Lun Bawang people. You see, during that time in the early 1900s, the Lun Bawang people were a dying tribe. We were drinking ourselves to death, and we were living in unhygienic conditions that contributed to our homes as breeding grounds for smallpox. Just to give you an idea how dirty it was, the livestock that families were rearing, like cows or pigs, chickens, they'll be living under the wooden house. And that would mean that we would be exposed to harmful bacteria and viruses all the time. You add on alcoholic poisoning and also highly superstitious beliefs where it stopped us from working because we were so scared of everything. It was a recipe for extinction. We were on the verge of extinction that in 1930s, our number were as small as 3,000 people. Even the orangutans are more than that. And so these 3 young men, and during that time, even Charles Vinebrook, who was the Raja then, had written us off and said, the country is better without these people. Sad, right? Anyway, these three young men took on the challenge. They preached the gospel, which resulted in the community embracing Christianity, but also it resulted in better living standards. And the change was so real that in 1940, the very same Charles Weinerbroek visited Laos and said, "Wow, I'm amazed at the change in the Murut people," which is another name for Lun Bawangs. And he commended the missionaries, saying, "I believe you have done more change in a few years than the government has done in 40. Amazing, isn't it, how young people can make a difference? Just by giving their time, sharing their knowledge and their beliefs, not imposing, of course, a whole tribe was saved. Wow. The second story is a group that needs mention. And these are the Peace Corps volunteers who gave a few years of their life in Malaysia. In 1962, the very first batch of volunteers came to the island of Borneo. And they work with the local communities to make a difference in the area of healthcare, agriculture, and also education. And one of the beneficiaries from this program is actually my late father. And I remember him talking very fondly of the volunteer that helped him. I can't quite remember his name. But this volunteer took a liking to him and pretty much mentored him his early years of secondary school. And it's because of this mentorship, I believe, that allowed my father to have many opportunities in life. And I also believe if not for this mentorship, he would not have had the chance to become a lecturer in Batu Lintang Teachers College. And eventually, because of that, meet my mom, who, by the way, is an excellent educator too. All right, now, of these two stories, you might be thinking as well, come on, Sarah, these people, they're one of a kind. They're born to make a difference. The stars aligned and the sun shone when they came into the world. But I hope my third story would influence you otherwise. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to this man, Balang Lasung. He's my father. And my father, he represented Malaysia in the event of javelin on various accounts. And I think his best contribution to the country was when he won 4 gold medals in a row in SEA Games. And together with his senior, Mr. Nashata Singh, the two of them conquered the javelin scene in Southeast Asia for 20 years. Malaysia boleh. All right. Now, I can attest to you and I can give you testimony how difficult it was to be living under a high-performing parent's shadow. In Form 1, I went to school, and lo and behold, I'm recognized as, Balang Lasung's daughter, perfect, come, let me sign you up now to throw javelin for your sports house. Now, needless to say, that gene from my father did not pass on to me. My miserable 17-meter throw is a far cry from my father's record-breaking 72-meter throw. Achievements aside, I believe my father was wholeheartedly a philanthropist at heart. He didn't have the means to give back money for him, but he gave whatever time and resources he could to advance education, especially with his family. He had the chance to experience the power of education in his life and how it changed it. And he brought that value with him wherever he went. And he guided a lot of his actions too. He believed so much in education that he was willing to live on bread and water alone in his early days of being a lecturer, just so that he could give more money back to his family so that they could study. He believed so much in education that I remember my aunt talking fondly of this time where she lost her wristwatch and her calculator, and it was about exam time, to a thief. And in her way of telling, she said, when my brother found out, he gave me his last 100 ringgit. And here I have a new watch and calculator while my brother went hungry. This value did not go unnoticed when I grew up. My father would always remind how privileged I was while he had to fight for his education. My 20-minute car ride is nothing compared to his 2 days walk to school. My home, which is filled with books, every cupboard is filled with books, is pure luxury. And my biggest lesson was when he was so willing to take 2 of my cousins from his village down to Kuching just to give them a little bit more exposure in life so that eventually they can give back to the family. It didn't matter if he had to support 2 more people. All he knew was he needed to help, and help is what he did. And so it's because of all these stories growing up, education has become the passion in my life. And in the last 9 years, because of this passion, I've learned through my job as a teacher first and then moving on into Teach for Malaysia, I've learned a little bit of the workings of how the landscape works, how it looks like. And by part of that, I learned that through the Malaysian Education Blueprint, it showed Sarawak's poor performance in public examination. And as you can see in this graph here, especially SPM, our top performers are doing really well. But the kids on the other end of the spectrum, they're struggling. What are we doing to help them? Looking further into this matter, the statistical department showed that in recent 10 years, the year 2000 to 2010, Sarawak had the worst literacy rate in the country. Even our literacy rate in 2010 at 92.6 is lower than the literacy rate in 2000 for the national average. We're 10 years behind. And looking at these numbers, it brought to light the need of our state to me. It brought to me the need of our state and how most of this need actually comes from the interiors. And seeing these numbers, these statistics, it drove me to find opportunities where I can serve rural communities. And what I did was I started befriending teachers who were teaching in the rural area, and I worked together with them to form teams that would go in and inspire the kids, give motivational talks, expose them to what's available in the world. I wanted to do this because I needed to understand the rural context even more. And so in the last 4 years, I went to 3 different rural schools in both Sarawak and Sabah, and I formed 4 teams, so 4 different times, went into the schools, and we would spend about a week there talking to students and talking to teachers just to understand it a little bit better. And what I found amazed me. All the negative stereotypes that had been formed in my life were completely shattered. What I found instead were hungry individuals learning as much as they can about the world because they don't know what's out there, so they just want to learn as much as they can. What I found too were students giving their best because that education is their only way out. What I found too were teachers trying as best as they can with the little resources that they have to help the students understand the world. But the reality of the matter is many of these students have never left their villages or communities. That's the only world that they know. The reality is the students don't understand the importance of the subject that they're studying because it's not related to their everyday lives. And the reality at hand is that our current system, they're not helping our interior kids being set up for success. Not at all. How do you expect a kid in the rural areas of Kapit who has never left his village or community to answer a question about the Petronas Twin Towers? As our question lacks contextualization, we too lack the ability to really understand and test the students' full potential. One particular incident in one of my trips really struck deep within me, and it's about this incident. And as you can see, the little boy is holding an orange device, and behind there is a light green thing. It's the same thing, just different colors. And I was having a tutoring session with the SPM kids at night, and we had a 2-minute break, and he immediately rushed to the other side of the class and tried to plug in that thing. So out of curiosity, I went there and asked him in Malay, "Hey, why are you playing with the electric socket?" To which he replied, "Oh, we're not playing, teacher. I'm just trying to charge these things, the 2 things I was talking about." And I said, "Okay, what are these things that you're trying to charge?" "Oh, they're light, teacher. It's for us to study." "Light to study?" And he said, continue explaining, and he said, "Yeah, teacher, our generator keeps breaking down. We don't have enough light to study. Bear in mind, these are SPM students." I said, okay, so this is what your school is giving you to help you study, yeah? And he said, thinking that, the school is trying to compensate for the lack of resources. To which he said, "Oh no, teacher, I bought this myself." "You bought it yourself? How much is it?" "Not more than 50 ringgit, teacher." And it dawned on me. All the stories that my father told me growing up of how privileged I was. Everything that I took granted for, these kids have to fight for it. Everything that we in the urban setting have so easily come to us, they count it as privilege. 50 ringgit for a boarding student is a lot of money compared to us who spends 50 ringgit without a blink of an eye. And knowing this, thinking about this, stirs up all my emotions. Feelings of anger, feelings of sadness, frustration, disbelief, you name it, it's all stirred up. But feelings can only bring you to a certain point. It is the actions you choose to do after knowing all this that matters. And as Diogenes Laertius said, the foundation of every state is the education of its youth. The foundation of Sarawak is the education of our youth. And I believe deeply that if every one of us takes a little interest in the education landscape of Sarawak, and if every one of us gives a little back to make a difference, we can elevate the struggles of those in the interior and close the gap of those who can afford and those who can't. I'm going to end this with a picture of the people I work with in Miri. A crazy bunch of teachers, as you can see, but really fun to work with. And they're the only batch so far who has been sent to Sarawak. These people, and I hope more will come, I want to talk about them because they're exactly like our Peace Corps volunteers and the 3 Australians who gave a part of their lives to help education with our children. And at the end of the 2 years tenure, which is about to happen at the end of this year, a lot of them reflected and told me like, Sarah, I don't think I've done much. I don't think I've given much at all. But I beg to differ. 2 years is a lot. 2 years is a big part of your life. It's a lot. And a little goes a long way. You never know where your influence stops. Because as history showed, a little saved a tribe. A little allowed a boy to have opportunities in life. And a little allowed that same boy to support his family and build a legacy of the importance of education. And so, here, as we're all here, let's take a moment to think of the strengths that we have. Look out for those opportunities out there to do what we're naturally wired to do, to give back for better education in Sarawak. Thank you.